One of the biggest lies our consumerist society has successfully pushed upon us through centuries of brainwashing is that work isn't just about making money, it's about finding your purpose and contributing to the greater good of society. Now, whether this degenerate...
The consumerist society for centuries pushed on people that work is about finding purpose and contributing to the greater good of society. America is about 250 years old and centuries would be 200 plus years. So for the majority of America's history, people were sold work is about finding your purpose. Lots of jobs during the Industrial Revolution were very dangerous and very physically intensive. It was not about finding a purpose, it was about getting bodies to make the stuff. No one cared about your purpose, just can you do the job? There was a great chance there was no multiple round interviews, meeting the junior staff, senior staff, janitorial staff BS going on like now. They just wanted able bodies, that's it. Office work is very recent in American history, like close to the 1950s or so. So work transitioned from factory to office focus, the change from industry to service-based economy. With that change, since most people can do office work, even older people that wouldn't have been able to work in a factory, now someone can say, what is your purpose? Why do you want this job type BS? So you can see this person is going to over-exaggerate things and jump to weird conclusions. He has some points, he does have some good points, and others are just wacky wrong and obviously nothing to back up some of his claims, so there's no need for me to do research about this either.
Modern society is even worthy of our contribution is highly debatable in the first place, but we've already talked about this in plenty of other videos, so let's move on to the more important issues that this video is about. Why does modern work feel so meaningless, so nihilistic, and more importantly, can you escape this soulless 9-to-5 grind? You guys have been asking for...
Why does modern work feels meaningless? Do you want to be on a factory line like the 1800s? Would that make it feel meaningful? There should be no more meaning in work now versus any other time. Use work for what it's for, making money, then investing that money, then retire from work when you can.
Solutions a lot recently, instead of just pointing out problems. Fair enough, and I think for this specific topic, I might just have one that could work for a lot of you. The book BS Jobs by David Graeber makes a great argument that around 50% of jobs in modern society serve no real purpose. Now, I want to make it very clear.
Yes, they serve a very real purpose. Their purpose for you is a way for you to get capital to invest. Also, some jobs have perks like healthcare, education and such. Use them.
That neither he nor I are saying this to disrespect the people working them, but rather the broken modern day system that forces them to be there. A lot of jobs just exist for the sole purpose of stroking the ego of the rich and powerful. For example, those door attendants you see at luxury hotels. It's not like people aren't capable of opening doors by themselves. It doesn't serve any real practical purpose. It is purely a BS job. Now, there is another type of nihilistic, meaningless job too, which I talked about in a recent video. They aren't really technically meaningless. I mean, these jobs do actually serve an objective purpose and meaning for society, but they feel meaningless to the individual working them. For example, a cashier at a grocery store actually performs an important task that this society couldn't function without. But they feel like their job has no purpose, mostly because even though this hypocritical society depends on them to keep functioning, they also hardcore shame and humiliate them at the same time for work.
Have you ever seen a self-checkout kiosk? We really don't need cashiers anymore.
Working these necessary jobs. Graeber further argues that the reason this is so dangerous is because we've been brainwashed by centuries of Protestant work ethic propaganda that our self-worth is completely and entirely tied to our job, therefore creating the dangerously toxic...
Most normal people do not shame anyone for working a job. Only a certain special type of person would do that. Most normal people would shame a healthy person for not working. Now, I mostly agree with self-worth is tied to having a job. I could see that a parent or relative wanting you to be in a high position or having a high paying job versus a low paying job, and they're scolding you, right? For instance, I want my relatives to have a good to high paying job, right? When making this document, I called my nephew that was supposed to have sent me his testing fee, right? And he didn't. He said he was going to go for a cooking job for it, right? I told him to focus on the HVAC, and he can get that cooking job later if he needs to. I want him to focus getting that certificate because in my mind, it has the possibility of opening more avenues than another cooking job. However, I don't care what a job a stranger has, just as long as he has one.
Psychological association that if your job is meaningless, then so is your worth as a human being. It's a bit funny that this book came out in 2018, right as Gen Z, the generation most vocal about the soulless nature of work, started to come of age. I mean, as a millennial, I always felt that rather than giving me a purpose, work robbed me of a purpose more than anything else. Growing up as a kid, there were so many things that gave me meaning and purpose that I was always told that I'd have to give up because I would need a real job. Everything from playing basketball to volunteering to taking care of abandoned dogs at the animal shelter. I never got rich doing any of these things, but they gave me a way bigger purpose than working for a corporation ever could. It seems Gen Z has seen the
Basketball gives more purpose than a corporate job. Just looking at the jobs he was talking about, like cashier. A cashier is a gateway between items and someone getting the items they need, like medication, toiletries, and such. Things that keep people's lives going, and somehow shooting a ball through a hoop is more purposeful than that. Maybe I don't know what purpose means.
On this as well, which is why Let It Raw has become a global phenomenon, and I couldn't be more proud of them for this. I recently saw a trend in China where young Zoomers are opting to just move back home and take care of their aging parents for a small allowance per week. This brainwashed consumer society would laugh at them as a bunch of losers, of course, but if you think about it logically.
Yeah, who wouldn't laugh at that? The kids want an allowance to take care of their parents. Should the kids pay an allowance to the parents for taking care of them throughout the years? No? Oh, okay. So if someone can recognize that kids owe the parents nothing for taking care of them, then how can the person not recognize the parents owe nothing to the kids for the kids taking care of them?
Is it really more meaningful to stand in front of a luxury hotel door with a fake smile on your face pretending to give a shit about the next rich person on vacation? I would certainly think spending time with and taking care of your family gives you more purpose. Of course, I understand some of us have shitty families, and well, that's perhaps another story.
Does getting paid and having benefits like healthcare and or retirement fund is more meaningful than still living off your parents without any additional benefits? And once the parents kick the bucket, then what then? Will the person finally adult up that late in life?
Or another video. Solutions. Let's talk solutions. As I mentioned in the beginning, I actually have some solutions for you if you're watching this and finding this to be relatable. Now, I have to first preface this by saying that solutions are tricky because the ideal solution is going to vary depending on the individual. We're all more or less facing the same problems, but a solution that would work for a 20-year-old single guy in America might not work for a 30-year-old married guy with kids in India. Every time I've tried to propose solutions in my videos, I always get a comment of, well, but this only works if you're single. This only works if you're from America. This only works if you're from Europe, so on and so forth. Look, guys, I wish I could save all of you. I really wish I could. But the only way I could do that is if I was secretly the second coming of Jesus and I could just wave a magic wand and make everyone rich. Hate to break it to you, unfortunately, I'm not. But here's the best.
Great. You know how this works. You can only give the advice that works for you, and what you perceive will work for the majority of others too.
Solution I can give that worked for me personally as well. It's not going to work for all of you, but I think it could work for most of you. Part of what's enslaved us to the broken modern day system of work is our reliance on money. You need money to survive, to pay your rent and bills, so on and so forth. But money is a relatively recent invention in the context of human history. People survived long before money existed, and the way they did that was through a bartering system.
Money has been around for thousands of years. I think we adapted well to money, right? The internet was like a 1970s invention, so since human race lived without that boomer's tech for so long, can we drop it and still survive? Identifying a problem is a way to solve the problem. However, over-exaggerating will conflate the problem and then we won't be able to solve the actual problem. For most problems in life, while living off others is a solution, it is most definitely not a desirable solution. What happens when the others no longer want you? Did you save up so you can be independent? Well, even jobs are not forever. You will get old where you can't work anymore, so you would need to have saved some money for independence.